Welcome to Brain Vision.
In this example, we're working with the idea of cartels, and we're given the information that Russia and South Africa both produce much of the world's diamonds. And we are given that they have a constant marginal cost equal to $1,000, and we're also given in the book their demand schedule. So it's this big table with the prices and quantities that are associated with one another. What I like to do, however, is treat those prices and quantities as coordinate points, and I like to produce a linear function to describe them. I think it's much easier to work with, less cumbersome than repeatedly having to reference back to this big table. So I've found for us that we have quantity equal to 13,000 minus P, and then solving for P, we have that the price is equal to 13,000 minus Q. And I did that just by solving for a basic linear function, basic algebra that many of us should know. So we're going to start by assuming we're working with perfect competition. We want to know the price and quantity if there are many sellers in the market, which means the perfect competition profit maximizing condition is price is equal to marginal cost. And luckily we were given all of this information already. You see, we have this price function of 13,000 minus Q, setting that equal to our marginal cost of $1,000 that was given to us. We're able to solve for Q is equal to 12,000. It's fairly straightforward. And now if we wanted to find the price, all we need to do is plug this quantity back into our price function, which is equal to 13,000 minus Q. Plugging in 12,000 for our quantity, we get a price which is equal to $1,000. And that would be our price and quantity under perfect competition or in a market where we have many sellers. Now let's consider we're working with a monopoly. We have only one seller. And the only thing that's really changing is this profit maximizing condition. And the profit maximizing condition for monopoly is that marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So working under this, what we already know is that marginal cost is staying constant at 1,000, but we need to find marginal revenue. And to find marginal revenue, what we first need to do is find total revenue. And we know that total revenue is equal to price times quantity. Well, we were given this price function where 13,000 minus Q is equal to our price. So we're just going to plug that in for this price value, 13,000 minus Q, and we're just going to multiply that by another Q. Simplifying this, we get a total revenue which is equal to 13,000 Q minus Q squared. And then to find our marginal revenue, we just need to take the derivative of total revenue with respect to Q, which gives us 13,000 minus 2Q for marginal revenue. And then let's just go ahead and set that equal to this marginal cost that we said is equal to 1,000 so that we can solve for that profit maximizing condition. So setting that equal to our marginal cost of 1,000, what we can now do is solve for Q. And solving for Q here, what we're able to find is that Q is equal to 6,000. So under monopoly, we have a quantity equal to 6,000. And then price is again pretty straightforward. We're just going to plug it back into our price function, which is 13,000 minus Q. Plugging in that 6,000, it gives us a price which is equal to $7,000. All right, now let's assume Russia and South Africa form a cartel together to sell these diamonds. So under a cartel, they're still working with this profit maximizing condition that they were under monopoly, where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So we can know that under this cartel, we still have a price which is equal to $7,000 and a quantity which is equal to 6,000. That hasn't changed. However, the profits in this case are going to be split evenly amongst the two countries. So let's go ahead and figure out what our total revenue would be here. And total revenue being equal to price times quantity is going to be our price of $7,000 times our quantity of 6,000, which gives us a total revenue that's equal to $42 million. But we want to know the profits. And what we know of profits is that profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. So we just found our total revenue, which is 42 million, and total cost we can calculate as 1,000, which is our marginal cost, times Q. And Q in this case we said is 6,000. So that gives us a total cost which is equal to $6 million. So if we wanted to now solve for this profit, we're going to take that total revenue of 42 million. Subtract from it our total cost of 6 million. And that gives us a shared profit for these two, which is equal to $36 million. But if we want to know what each country is going to be able to take away from this, assuming that they're splitting their profits evenly, we'll divide it by 2. And that gives us this shared profit, which is equal to $18 million. All right, let's now go ahead and assume that South Africa chooses to produce an additional 1,000 units. So they're going to produce 1,000 more units of diamonds, or 1,000 more diamonds, whatever we're measuring this in. So this additional 1,000 is telling us that now South Africa's quantity that they're producing, so this quantity for South Africa is going to be equal to the 3,000 that it would have been producing, because we were assuming that they were splitting everything evenly, meaning that the quantity they would have been producing under this cartel would be equal to that 6,000 divided by 2, giving us 3,000 for each country, right? So now South Africa is still producing those 3,000, but they're producing an extra 1,000, meaning they're now producing 4,000 units. So now let's go ahead and calculate the differences in the profits for these two countries. Let's go ahead and calculate it for South Africa to start. And what we know is that profits, like we said, are equal to total revenue minus total cost. So let's find total revenue. Total revenue being price times quantity. And we know that the quantity for South Africa, like we just said, is going to be that 4,000. However, the price we're working with is going to change. It's no longer going to be that price of 7,000 because all of a sudden this total quantity produced has changed. So let's go back to our price function, which, like we said before, is price is equal to 13,000 minus Q. Our quantity has changed. Now we have this 3,000 that Russia is still producing, plus now the 4,000 that South Africa is producing, which is giving us a total of 4,000 for our quantity. So taking 13,000 minus that new quantity of 7,000, what we get is a price that's equal to 6,000. So now that we have a price of 6,000, we can plug that into our total revenue function right here, subtracting from that total cost, which total cost is still going to be that 1,000 times Q, like we said, but our Q has changed now. Our Q is for Africa or South Africa, we're only considering them, so we now have marginal cost, which is this 4,000 times 1,000 gives us 4 million. So all of a sudden what we have for South Africa is a profit which is equal to $20 million. Now what we really want to do is compare this to the profit of Russia that has taken place after South Africa has deterred or has deviated from their agreed upon quantities. So if we do this exact same thing now, however, for Russia, we're going to take, let's see. So we know that the quantity of Russia, they're still producing 3,000. So we're just going to plug all of this in. We're going to see what their total cost is, which is their quantity of 3,000 times marginal cost, which is 1,000. So they now have a total cost. It's remained the same at 3 million. Their total revenue is going to be their quantity times the price. Total revenue here is this quantity of 3,000 times this new price of 6,000. Remember that we found before, because the overall quantity within the market has changed, meaning that the market price has changed. So that's why we're working with this price of $6,000 in both this piece and the piece for South Africa up here. So this gives us a total revenue for Russia, which is equal to $18 million. And now to find their profit, what we know we do is we take total revenue minus total cost. We have that total revenue of 18 million. Subtracting from it that total cost of 3 million gives us a profit for Russia, which is only equal to 15 million. So what we're seeing here is that South Africa is now earning $5 million more in profit than Russia, and this is comparing it to what they did have before. When they were working together as a cartel, splitting everything evenly, they were each earning a profit of 18 million. So in this case, by South Africa choosing to deviate from that agreed upon quantity, they're gaining that additional 2 million, whereas Russia is ending up losing that $3 million. So we see that South Africa is winning here versus Russia is losing. So we wanted to discuss why cartels typically are unsuccessful. It's because there's almost always going to be some party within it that has some incentive to either raise the output or lower the price. So in this case, what we saw is that South Africa increased their output, and by doing that, they were able to reduce the price because the market price goes down as our supply increases. So South Africa increasing their supply reduced the overall market price, and as a result, what we're seeing is this vast difference in profits. South Africa had this incentive to produce more, which ended up hurting Russia, and as a result, we're oftentimes going to see these cartels fail.